Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us and logging on and participating in this year's 2021 Virtual Race for Autism Superhero Challenge. Hope you all are getting out there and logging those miles, I should say kilometers actually, in favor and in honor of those with autism. I know that I sure have been. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea Asaro. I'm the outreach specialist for NFAR. NFAR is a San Diego based nonprofit that has been working to improve the lives of those with autism for almost 2 decades. Our current mission and most important initiative to date is flipping the script on autism and unemployment. Now, this being Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, I'd be remiss if I didn't start this conversation by laying the groundwork and talking about all things autism before we dive into falling off the cliff, life after graduation. Now, words matter, especially in today's society. So, I wanted to begin with this slide to just introduce you to some of the terms that you're going to hear me using today throughout this conversation. People with autism typically feel very strongly about the words that are used to describe them. And the best way to find out what someone prefers is just by asking them. I will be using all of these phrases throughout this discussion and presentation interchangeably, but I trust that anyone listening knows that I mean them all with respect as an allies of those with autism. Just to give you a little background though, person with autism is considered person first language because it puts the person ahead of the condition and is preferred by much of the disability community. Autistic, on the other hand, is called identity first language. Some people with autism believe that their autism is such an integral part of who they are that it should be acknowledged and celebrated in conversation. At NFAR, we believe in the neurodiversity model of autism, and it should be celebrated and appreciated and accepted. Now, while each person with autism is unique and autism impacts each person differently, there are three common areas where those with autism are affected. And typically, that is in the way that they act, the way they communicate, and the way they interact with other people. So, what does that look like? Well, again, like I said, each person with autism is unique, but here are some common traits found in those with autism. Now, if you're a relative or a parent or a caregiver of someone with autism, these traits might look familiar to you. But it's important for me to point out that not every person with autism has these traits, and not every person with these traits has autism. But these are just something to keep in mind. The current incidence rate for autism is 1 in 54, hence our 54K challenge as part of the Race for Autism Virtual Superhero Challenge. Now, you might notice on this slide that it says that's the number of children identified with autism. But as you know, I'm sure most of you know, is autism is a lifelong condition and there is no cure, and people are affected throughout at every age and every stage of life. For example, right now in a mid-sized metropolitan city like San Diego, there are about 800 graduates coming out of San Diego County high schools every year with some form of autism. And that brings us to the subject of our conversation. So for those people, and if you are one of those persons who is getting ready to graduate from high school with autism, what does that look like? What is the next step going to be like for you? Someone somewhere along the way likened graduating to high school with autism to falling off a cliff. And that analogy has really stuck. And in fact, it's the inspiration for this conversation. Graduating from high school or even from college with autism can be very scary because there appears to be no roadmap from where you are to where you want to be. So it's a very anxiety producing time. And that's not just true for people with autism, it's also true for parents. I'm sure every parent out there watching can relate to this picture and that feeling of being up in the middle of the night and wondering, what does the future look like for my child? And what will happen? This is the big question that every parent asks: what will happen after I'm gone? But the good news, and what I'm here to share with you today, is that at NFAR, we've worked with hundreds of people, standing, left on that cliff, that very same cliff, people with autism, through our training programs and just through our network. And so we have a pretty good idea of how to get from where you are to where you want to be, which is a life of maximum independence, employment, and fulfillment. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. I'll give you a hint though, it doesn't look like this. This is the typical trajectory, career, professional trajectory for someone, where they would start off graduating from high school and then go on to college. And, everyone is encouraged to go to college these days, maybe with a little stop at community college. And then you might even go on and get an advanced degree. And then ta-da, landing on your career. And this would be great if it worked out this way, but for reasons we're going to explore, this is not the path that most people with autism follow. What we've discovered is that that path looks more like this for many people with autism. It's not a straight line. There's a lot of twists and turns, maybe even some stops along the way. And for some, it tends to be a little longer than that typical trajectory we just looked at. So, what does happen to people with autism when they graduate from high school? Well, we don't have great data on this, so these are just approximate figures, but we do have a pretty good idea of, the kind of the three different trajectories that people do take, at least to take that first step when they're getting started. Now, you might notice that the first part, the 25% that go to college, I'd like to point out that it is only 25%, despite the push that we're really feeling in K through 12 schools for everyone to go on and earn a degree. That's simply not the case for many with autism. And there are good reasons for this. Also, I would like to point out that 25% number, that's not the number of people who go on to college and get degrees. That's just people who go on to any form of college, whether that's a community college and earning an associate's degree, or even just take some community college classes. The number of people who actually go on and earn four-year degrees or even master's degrees or beyond is even smaller than that. And like I said, there's actually pretty good reasons for this. First of all, while K through 12 schools have done a pretty good job of figuring out, and I know that's debatable, but they have done a pretty good job of figuring out how to support their students with autism, colleges and universities are still working that out. And while some colleges are doing great and have some really solid programs for those with autism, most are still working on it. And so right now, for most people with autism and at most colleges, they just aren't able to get the support and the services they need to be successful. Also, a lot of people with autism had a bad school. A lot of people in general had a bad school experience in high school, whether that's from bullying or struggling with the curriculum or heightened anxiety caused by school. School was just not a great time for them. So they have no interest in continuing the school experience for another 4 or more years. Additionally, there are curriculum barriers. The cognitive differences of those with autism make some subjects simply hard for them to grasp and hard to pass. We've had people come through our technical training programs that could be technology wizards and great at coding, but had to drop out of college because they just couldn't wrap their minds around calculus. Now, I have to say, it's not just on the math sciences side. I've also heard the same thing said of English or the foreign language requirements that are inherent that you need to go through and you need to pass in order to get a 4-year degree. And then there are interest deterrents. Those with autism are very interest driven. They really like to study things that they are passionate about, and they tend to go deep and become subject matter experts. But they're really not interested in taking those other things that aren't relevant to their area of passion. And right now, a 4-year degree involves those types of general ed requirements. And so many people don't want to have that kind of an education where they have to endure those classes in order to get the diploma or to get the degree, and would rather find another way to find employment and to enter into their profession. So as you can see, there's lots of reasons why 4-year college isn't a good fit for people with autism right out of school. Now, some people do. It is worth noting they might come out of high school, not go straight to college, or not have success in college right away, but then go back later on and be able to earn a degree. And we're seeing more and more of that as well. If you or someone you love is on the college track, we would encourage you to continue to pursue it. I don't in any way mean this to dissuade anyone from trying to get more education, because we do know that employment outcomes are better the more degrees and credentials you have. So if you are looking into colleges and universities that do well for those with autism, here are just a few that we have heard of at NFAR. Now, I'm going to point out, I'm not endorsing them. We at NFAR are not endorsing these programs. We don't have any information about them, but we have heard of them, and they do have a reputation for doing a good job with their students that have autism. So you'll have to go and ask your good friend Google on your own and get more information about these programs if you're interested. Please don't call the NFAR offices and ask us, because we won't be able to help you. Okay, so that's 25%. What about the rest? Well, another 25, those who qualify, go on to extended high school programs. Here in the San Diego Unified District, that program is called TRACE, and students can stay in until they're 22. And this is where they can continue their education and also get some other important services and skills. Where they can learn things like um, independent living skills. They can get some job search preparation and coaching, and also get some work experience. We've had parents in our network and through our parent groups who have really pushed for their child to be on the diploma track. Students that go through extended high school typically don't receive a diploma, they do receive a certificate instead. And some parents think that their child will have more options with that diploma, so they push for their child to stay on that diploma track. Now, again, while I'm not advocating, because I know that this is a deeply personal decision, we have found that people with autism who stay in those extended high school programs do experience a benefit that those who graduate at 18 with the diploma do not. And basically, we like to call that the incubator effect. We do know that autism is a developmental difference, and that's true for children, but it's also true for adults as well. Where really it becomes a question not necessarily of what a person with autism is capable of doing, but when. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, I do know a young man whose parents had given up on him ever riding a bicycle. They tried really hard to help him master this skill because they thought it would give him more independence and an opportunity to hang out with his peers, his buddies in the neighborhood, and he wasn't able to do it. And they had really given up on that until he was 18. And he decided to get on a bike by himself. And then he took off, and the rest is history. So we see this with a lot of things, whether, like in childhood, whether it's toilet training, which can be a struggle, but then can come later on. With language, often that happens at different stages than it does for a typical person. And this is true throughout life. So, one benefit of these extended high school programs is it gives a person with autism that chance to incubate, that chance to learn more skills and to gain a little bit more development and maturity that might put them in a better position to take that next step. So, again, while we're not advocating for extended high school, we are saying that it does have a benefit that should be considered when weighing those pros and cons and making a decision whether to go with an extended high school program or to seek a diploma track. And if you think about it, what is college anyway? Actually, I think college is just an incubator. Most people, when they're 18 and graduate from high school, aren't ready to live on their own and to go into work a full-time job. And college gives them that chance to gradually and incrementally gain the independence, and the skills that they need in order to be successful on their own. So think about that. That's another thing to think about. So that gave us 50%, but as you can see, there's still the majority, and a whole nother approximately 50% of people with autism fall in the other category. They either have no desire or don't want to or can't go on to college, or they don't qualify for extended high school or choose not to do that. So what happens to that 50%? And that is the bulk of people coming out of high schools with some form of autism. Well, these people end up looking for jobs that are typical for those with their high school graduates, for those with high school diplomas. Now, usually these are service sector jobs. They're the kind of front-facing opportunities, employment opportunities that you'd find in a retail establishment or a restaurant, a movie theater, those types of positions. Now, these jobs aren't the best fit for those with autism due to their social and communication challenges. Keeping this in mind, it might not come as a surprise to you that the current national unemployment rate for those with autism is 85%. So that means that these people coming out with a high school diploma aren't having much luck at finding those types of jobs or making that transition from school to work. I should point out, though, that this unemployment figure isn't just for those people who are just going on with and coming out with a diploma. It is actually also for college graduates and for people with autism who have master's degrees and beyond. And this unemployment figure is higher than it is for all other disability subgroups combined. Now, why is this? You're probably thinking there are a lot more jobs out there than just those service sector jobs that I mentioned, and they should have other people coming out of high school should have other opportunities for employment than those service sector jobs, and that's true. But yet they're still not able to make that transition to employment in other areas as well. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One, and we already talked about that, is that they lack the degrees or the credentials in order to get the position. There's, the competition for talent is getting steeper, especially in this post-pandemic environment, but we saw this before that. So it's really hard to secure that first job if you don't have that 4-year degree or if you don't have another professional credential. Another reason why is lack of skills and experience. And this is the classic catch-22 of you need a job to get experience, but you need experience to get a job. And the other thing that many people with autism have is they have a history of a whole bunch of short engagements on their resume, which can also be a barrier to employment. And finally, there's just a lack of industry awareness and understanding. People in the business world just don't understand what people with autism are capable of. Then, of course, there's the interview. And I put this picture in here. It's taken from the Will Ferrell movie, The Step Brothers. And if you haven't seen The Step Brothers, I would recommend watching it, if not just for this scene alone. You can YouTube it too. Just go on YouTube and look for Step Brothers interview scene and watch it. It really is entertaining, and we could all use a good laugh right now. Now, I'm not suggesting that people with autism go to their job interviews wearing a tuxedo, or that they bring their stepbrother along to help them, or their mother or father. I know that that's not the case. But it is agreed upon that right now, the number one barrier to employment for those with autism is the traditional interview, due to the communication and social differences that people with autism have. The interview is really, if you think about it, it does not screen for skills or ability to do a job. It's really screening for fit. And as long as this is the primary gateway to employment, unfortunately, people with autism will always be screened out. Now, fortunately, and this is the good news, there are companies who are starting to figure that out. And they're starting to actively recruit those with autism because they realize people with autism have their cognitive differences, and I like to call them their cognitive exceptionalities, really make them great assets to any company. Things like innovative thought processes, hyper focus, strong attention to detail, but also a high efficiency and productivity with a low error rate, very trustworthy and reliable employees. All of these traits that are shared by many people with autism make them a great addition to any team. And companies like Microsoft and SAP, JP Morgan Chase, and the list goes on, and it's growing daily, are starting to figure out, and they're even starting to modify their hiring practices in order to actively recruit and to retain people with autism. So if you're one of those people who are on that cliff and trying to make that next step, again, to employment, maximum independence and fulfillment, that's what we think the next step should always be at NFAR. How do you do that? How do you become one of those people with autism that companies are going to actively want to hire and who they are looking for? And by the way, this is true whether you're graduating from high school or graduating from college. People that come out of college with that 4-year degree don't necessarily have the ticket to employment, as I said, and that 85% unemployment number includes them as well. So what can you do? What can you do to make that easier? Well, at NFAR, we believe that the answer lies in providing people with autism with the skills and the training that they need to be successful and effective on the job from day one. We do this through our technical training programs that are specifically designed for autistic learners. And they don't just include training in the hard skills that you need for a specific role. And we do train to a variety of high demand professions and industries, but not just in those hard skills, as I said, which tend to come easier for those with autism. We also train people with autism, though, in the soft skills needed for work. These are executive functioning and social skills like time management, task prioritization, meeting etiquette, even what to wear to work. Then we round that out by giving all of our training participants the opportunity to practice in a real world setting and on real world work samples in order to develop some comfort and familiarity over time and mastery. And so by the time that our graduates are ready to transition to work, they already have a complete understanding of what they'll be expected to do on the job from day one. But that's only half the equation. We realized early on that no matter how well we train our participants and enable them and prepare them for work, that was really, they weren't going to be able to be successful unless we provide the companies who are going to be hiring them with training and support as well. And so that's why we launched our corporate consulting arm, NFAR Talent, to provide all the training and resources that company needs to create a truly inclusive work environment. And you can see on the screen, these things include, help with recruiting and corporate training, as well as onboarding and support. And then we also follow the employee throughout the length of the engagement to make sure that they have everything that they need and that the manager does as well. And as you can see, this is how we feel like we're working both ends of the autism unemployment problem. We're trying to drive candidate employment readiness through training, but also trying to help the companies who want to hire more neurodiverse talent to have what they need to be able to do it. By doing that, by pushing those two sides together, we're really able to create those meaningful employment opportunities. So what are our recommendations? If you are someone who is on that cliff looking to make this next step, what can you do? If you're graduating from high school, what are some steps that you can take right now to help you to get to the other side? Well, the first thing you can do is to connect with your state and local vocational rehab and your state agency. Now, I know not every state has an agency that helps with those with developmental disabilities, but if you do, make sure you connect with them and make sure you connect with your local vocational rehab. Here in San Diego, it's called the Department of Rehabilitation. These organizations have resources that can help you with some of the things that you're going to need, like jobs training and coaching. They do have access to training programs. They also do independent living services and can help with transportation. And some can even help with tuition as well. And just because you're graduating doesn't mean that you should stop learning. Some people find it hard to continue to upskill and to find ways to continue to move forward without the structure of school. But it's important to continue to do so even when looking for your first job or whatever that next step is going to be. And ways that you can do that is by taking a class in something that interests you. Even if you don't want to go on to college per se, you can still take classes at a local community college or through continuing education, adult ed classes, or through private organizations that offer classes. So if let's say you're interested in video games and you love playing video games, why not take a class in Unity and learn how to code those games that you play? Another great way to continue to move forward and upskill is by volunteering. Again, find something you're interested in and find an organization that specializes in that. And it might take a little while to find that organization it's a good match with your skills and your interests. But it's a great resume builder when you can. That's a great way to build your resume. You have now experience with a professional organization, but also in order to be able to meet people that could possibly be a recommendation for you professionally and a referral. And you never know, sometimes volunteer work does turn into professional work. So I would strongly encourage you to continue to volunteer. The other thing you should do is start building a social network. Again, this is another thing that's hard to do once you graduate from school, but we all have, as humans, we all have needs for social connection. So these needs should not be ignored. And some great ways to do that. We already mentioned a couple, taking those classes, volunteering. Those are really good ways. Another great thing is go online and at meetup.com. There's a meetup of just about everything you could possibly be interested in every city that you could possibly be in. And right now, since the pandemic, most of those meetups are happening virtually. So it's an easy way to get out there and to meet some people in a non-threatening way. And finally, why not visit nfar.org and explore our suite of training programs to figure out if they're right for you. We have our original training program, NFAR Tech, which is a 7-month training program that trains people with autism for entry-level roles as software testers and other technology roles. Then we also have NFAR Works, which is designed, because we know not every person with autism is a technologist. So NFAR Works is designed to create more opportunities for even more people with autism and for more companies, because businesses also have needs outside of tech roles. So NFAR Works is our light industrial and office training program that happens over 11 months. And participants of that program get to learn a variety of high demand roles, such as light manufacturing, product fulfillment, post and parcel, and document management. And then at the end of that program, they can decide what they like and what they want to specialize in. And then we have our latest training program, NFAR Cyber, which is expected to launch this year. And that's going to be a 9-month training program that is going to train people to be entry-level SOC analysts. So if you're interested in learning more about any of those programs, visit nfar.org, fill out the interest form on the homepage, and someone will contact you to assess which program might be right for you. And if it turns out none of our programs are a good fit, then we can also direct you to other resources. Thank you so much again for logging on and for being a part of our Race for Autism. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. nfar.org is the best place to reach me, and I'd be happy to help you on your journey so that you don't fall off the cliff after you graduate. Thanks again. Have a great day. And hopefully we'll see you out there logging those miles, those kilometers in the Race for Autism. Thanks again. Bye.